Thank you. Approval of the agenda. The agenda is approved as presented. Recognition of achievement. I'm sorry,
Can I
yes.
ask about the agenda?
Yes.
I had sent an email last week to the board and to Keith asking for some modifications to the agenda. I had requested that, how I'd like to see an academic progress report section added, not presented from students, not presented from teaching staff, but presented from central office. Nothing fancy, have it be short, to the point, targeted about our programs and our student achievement data. I mean, truly 5 minutes or less. I'm not interested in the confusing jargon or anything, just simple data about our programs. And I'm assuming that with three people on central office with instruction in their job title, that we could easily add this on to each of our meetings. And then in the board policy, it says, or in the board policy under agenda, it says that a board member can request that upon concurrence with the board president. So Rob, I'm officially asking that this be put on the agenda and hope that you can concur.
I seen it and I wasn't going to do that. That's why I didn't respond.
So you're not going to?
Nope.
You don't want us to have central office report on student data to us?
It's a change from what we do. It'll be a little bit more talking over, but no. I had an answer for you and I didn't email it to you.
Yeah, I didn't hear, so,
no.
okay, well, I'll continue to ask, because I think that's really important.
Not a
since-
problem. Appreciate it. So the agenda is presented. Recognitions of
Changes to the
achievement.
agenda?
Dr. Wonder.
I would like to, actually, I'd like to make a motion to add our February 21st special meeting as an information item to discuss the location change, the non-taping of it, and the cost.
Support. Moved by Member Barcon, supported by Piggott, to discuss the February 21st study session. Any discussion?
Yes, at the last meeting we discussed about having the February 8th special meeting, which we did have. And then we made a compromise at that time to have Megan find out when this auditorium would be available and put those dates to us. And then through those multiple dates, we would pick a date. And we picked February 21st as a board. And the meeting was set to be here. So we could tape it and have audience participation. And then, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever, very quickly, just recently, we were told that there was a location change that would be taken, it would be moved to Crary, which is the size of a classroom, 30 by 30, and that there was a cost, that wouldn't be taped, and that there was a cost to having it here, which I think we have alternate information about. So I just would like to know the purpose of moving it and what that would be.
So the motion right now is to put it on the agenda, correct?
A discussion.
To put it on the agenda.
Yes.
Then when it becomes an agenda item, then we discuss it. I'm just trying to make sure I follow.
Yeah, okay, if you'll put it on the agenda, don't we discuss if we,
Can I?
Roberts?
Wait,
Yeah.
There's a discussion about putting it on the agenda. That's where we're
okay,
at right
okay.
now.
And yeah, that's what I just would kind of want to know the nature then. So if we put it on the agenda, we're just going to discuss why there was a change in venue, essentially. And that's basically the gist of the request to add it to the agenda.
Yes.
I can explain it, but I'll wait till if it's actually on the agenda. So
I think if we put it on the agenda, we're just, I guess, the intention is to find out or just get an explanation as to why the venue was changed, is basically what it would consist of.
I think we already know why it was changed and what the circumstances are, but I mean, if you want to publicly add it to the agenda so that you can state that, but we all got an email indicating why.
it was never intended to be here.
Are we,
It's-
how does this go? Do we discuss it now? Or do
Okay.
we?
Yeah, maybe,
Okay, I'll-
because I agree that we did get an email,
So-
but I guess if it just would be.
Well, we
be
need to
more
still
open.
talk one at a time. I'm not interrupt.
Yeah, I'm
You
sorry.
got the floor, but
Okay.
I'm trying to.
I think, yeah, if it could, I guess we're just looking for an open conversation about why it was moved. We received information, so I guess it the intent is to just put that on a record, is what it sounds like, what the request is.
I don't think it needs to be an agenda item. I'll gladly add it to my board report, but I can call for a vote. All those in favor of putting on the agenda? Opposed? Motion fails. So with that, we move to information items. Well, the approval of the agenda, the agenda will stand as presented.
Well, I would like to make a motion to the agenda. I move that we discuss the bullying task force and the current status of the bullying task force on tonight's agenda as a discussion item.
Support that.
It's been moved and supported to add an agenda item to discuss a bullying task force? Is that
The
what-
bullying task force.
The bullying task force. I do have an update of where we are in the district.
Are we going to, but what I'm asking for is to make it an agenda item so we can have a full board discussion?
I I would appreciate that as well, actually, if we did have it as an agenda item. That way we could thoroughly talk about it as a board. And I know a number of board members have been very active in the community and involved in speaking about this bullying issue with many parents. So I think the community would really likely appreciate an update of where we stand and what our experiences have been over the past few weeks.
Any other comments? All those in favor of adding the agenda item on the bullying task force? Opposed? Motion passes 5-1. We will put that on information item under 7, it'd be 7F.
Okay, and I thank you for that. And I also have another motion. I'd like to motion that we I'd like to move that we discuss the preschool programs and the decision-making process for cutting programs on tonight's agenda. And again, have it be a discussion item and have it be where we talk about it.
I'd support that.
So there's a motion, I'm not clear. The motion is to discuss preschool?
Preschool programs and the decision-making process for cutting programs.
Well, okay. I will say that, as a board president, I do set the agenda. I try to take everybody's concerns into play when we set an agenda, and I'm not sure why we get requests to add agenda items at 6:05.
Well, I looked at Robert's Rules of Order, and it's something that I can do, and I've asked to have agenda items on the agendas before, and I've just been told no. So I'm doing it now, and this is following procedure, so we'll take a vote and decide if it goes on the agenda or
Make
not.
a comment. I will add that there was an addition to the agenda today at 3 o'clock, I believe it was, about 2:30 or 3. So this is not something that is unprecedented. It was something that I did not become aware of until about 5 o'clock today. Her asking tonight, in my opinion, is pretty in line with what was done earlier today with adding board member ethics to the agenda today.
And with Robert's Rules of Order, it's completely in line with that.
Certainly, I just disagree with adding another agenda item. I think that can be postponed until the next meeting.
I think, too, for a lot of us know that there was a lot of interaction back and forth, a lot of social media posting. There was people up in arms. Board members were involved. Superintendent was involved. Administration was involved. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to have it in the discussion. Be transparent. A lot of people here might have known about it. It's a discussion. We talked about it, how it went down, how it turned out, and then we move on. It's not a voting issue. It's more of an information to discuss what happened, how it happened, why it happened, the outcome, and we move forward.
Right. I will comment that the item I edited early this afternoon required no staff assistance. It only is information coming from me to the board. Preschool or preschool cuts or cuts in general I think would require impact or information from our staff, and I'm not really sure it's fair that we ask our staff at the same time we're presenting. So I'm going to vote against adding that item to the agenda.
We did have, our superintendent was directly involved, and he could weigh in.
Yeah, just if I may, yeah, this was, again, another issue this past week that a number of people in the community reached out to board members about. The superintendent was very actively involved very recently, and I know every board member was informed of that. So I'm not asking, or I don't think Mary's asking for, and I would support her motion, for anything other than just a review of what occurred and what the outcome was. And what is our process, which I think we're all pretty well versed on now, including our superintendent, for cutting early childhood programs.
Well, the whole discussion is, what are we versed on when a building principal makes staffing changes to adjust to her population? What's that?
Well, that's going to be the discussion.
Yeah,
we'd
that
like to bring
requires a
up.
lot. Okay.
We'll talk about that.
Sure.
That's what I'm hoping for.
I'm just saying that I'm against it, so. All those in favor?
I
I'm
just
sorry,
want to
Joan.
add, also, I'm concerned that we're putting our administration in a position where we don't have the right people or the right information that is being looked for. A typical information item we would have already discussed, and we would make sure we have the right people with the right information and the right detail. So I recognize that we want to get an update, and I'm wondering if, Dr. Wunderlich, if you might be willing in your superintendent comments as an alternative to provide an update on what transpired, so that we have that information made public.
I don't see the difference. I mean, when we're asking to add it to the agenda, it's going to be simply an overview of what occurred over the past week and what the process is.
Okay, I understand that you have a concern and you guys want to hear it. The issue right now is, are we even going to put it on the agenda? So all those in favor?
Well, I think we're giving reasons why we don't feel it's a bad idea. I think you talked about, are the right people here? I know Mr. Holbrook is here. He met very early on in the process, 3 weeks ago, very early on. Again, Dr. Wunderlich was very involved and helped expedite a solution or a compromise. So as far as not having the right people here, I think the right people are here. The board members, our superintendent, administration.
And the community.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 3-3. With that, we move...
No, excuse me, I have another motion, Mr. President. I would like to motion that we discuss our April 26th study session regarding the budget and its location of the meeting, and will it be taped?
Support.
There's a motion to put on the agenda for information on our April 26th study session. Did I get that correct?
Yes, and will it be taped? Where it will be and will it be taped?
We're not voting on tape, and we're just voting on putting on the agenda, though, correct? The
Yeah, we'll have a
of the meeting.
discussion if where it will be and if it will be taped.
Any comments on that agenda item?
I think, again, I don't think anything wrong with it. It's allowing board members to put their 2 cents in, to give their opinions on why it should be, why it shouldn't be. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but at least gives the opportunity for conversation. We have a lot of people here in the audience. I just don't think it's bad to have some dialogue as to why one might think it should be videotaped so the entire community can hear, and why others feel it should not be videotaped.
Mr. Dorr.
I agree. We have the community here, we have administration here, we have board members here. I think it would be helpful and insightful to have a conversation about whether we should be taping all of our meetings that we have here in this district.
Any other comments? I think that it can be solved without putting an agenda item. I don't intend to approve this one or vote for this one either, but all those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 3-3.
Okay, I also have another motion. I've asked in the past, and it did not, you did not respond to me about it, so I'm asking now, so we'll take a vote on it. I'd like to move that we discuss our bylaw and policy violations and discuss changes we need to do immediately to remedy them.
Support?
It's been moved moved and seconded to discuss specific bylaw violations?
Yes. I've outlined them in great detail in 2 different meetings, and asked at the end of each of those presentations that we add it to the agenda the next week, and it has not been done. So I'm asking I'm making a motion now to discuss,
The complete set of bylaws.
the bylaw violations that we are doing, and discuss a remedy so we can not be in violation anymore.
I appreciate what you're asking. I'm just trying to narrow it down so we all understand what we're going to put on the agenda to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have numbers of the violations, the policy numbers, or?
Yeah. I have them all here. Specifically, there's specifically the one about hiring and the $7 million of Blue Book spending that does not come for approval in front of the board.
It actually does come before approval in front of the board in the form of a budget.
Well, that's what I'd like to have a discussion about.
Well, it sounds to me like there's board members that do want to discuss this. I know Ms. Sutherland's chiming in. Trustee Bargon's chiming in as well. I would be interested in the information that Ms. Bargon does have. I think, sounds like to me that there would be support for that.
I would not support it.
And I don't understand why everybody's entitled to their vote. That's why there's 7 people. But if there is potential violations of bylaws, let's talk about it. Let's figure out if we are, and let's fix it, instead of just saying, no, we're not going to. I think, again, that's,
Right.
we're not doing our job. If we're ignoring it and refusing to speak about it, we're not doing our job.
That's a gross misrepresentation of what's happening here.
Right.
How is that?
In no way do I believe that that we are violating a board policy.
So we should talk about it, and
That's-
let's determine if we are or not.
But we have talked about it. We've talked about it each time it comes up. And so what we're talking about now is whether or not we want to have another agenda item added to the agenda. And I think that's what we want to focus on.
It's never been an agenda item. It's always been a board, in my board report. And usually when I bring it up, I just get people you just talk to me about it. But I would like to discuss and have it shown to me, rather than ignored or talked down to or badgered about it. I'd like to it needs to be shown to me why, when it clearly states in our bylaws that all hiring, support staff, and contracted people need to come in front of the board for approval. Now we have a system where there's a magical blue book section, $7 million, where people are hired and given raises, and it doesn't come in front of the board. And the reason is because they're not contractual. That's what the superintendent has said. We've never talked about it as a board. We've never talked about how this can be done. And then our HR person told me last week it was a long-standing practice. Doesn't matter. It's against our policy. We've never had a conversation about it as a board, a debate. And that's what transparency is. We should talk about it. And that's what I'm asking, that we have a discussion about that today.
Well, I'd encourage you to review previous board meetings, because we met as a board, it was brought up, it was discussed, and I agree, the majority of this board did not agree with you, and we moved on.
When was this?
Every time you bring it up.
But it's not an agenda item.
Not an
And I
agenda.
think, what we're talking about here is, there's one board member at least that thinks there are no violations. There's at least one other board member that thinks there are violations, so why not have a conversation about it? That's simply.
Because we have.
We actually haven't
No,
had
we haven't.
conversations. We've never had,
Not
like
an
Member Bargon
organized
said.
conversation on the agenda about that question.
In fact, you had the word violation taken out of the minutes, even though that's what I had said, Mrs. Sutherland, or Member Sutherland, so. We have not had a discussion
I
about
didn't
it.
have anything stricken from minutes.
Yeah.
So please don't misrepresent.
I asked to have it, my words, my exact wording was violation, and you said it didn't need to be in there.
Okay, and that meeting was recorded, and there was no changes to the recording of that meeting.
Right.
So I guess the motion is to add a discussion about possible bylaw violations. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 3-3.
Okay, I have another motion. I have another motion. I move that we change the agenda order to allow board members to address the superintendent comments and the community comments. I've always found it odd how our agenda is laid out, being a board meeting, having it be where audience talks board talks, and then our audience speaks, and then we are not allowed to say anything to the board, and then the superintendent speaks, and then the meeting's over. It's always left me feeling like I haven't responded to the community, so what I decided to do was look around and see, is this normal? Because I had remembered at Howell, that's not how it went, and I looked at neighboring districts, and Walled Lake Consolidated, all the districts put their agendas on the website, and they do public comments, superintendent comments, and then board comments, which makes sense. It's a board meeting. The board should end the meeting. Clarkston, public comments, superintendent admin comments, board comments. West Bloomfield, public comments, superintendent admin comments, board comments. And then Huron Valley, actually, they do board comments, superintendent admin, public, the board again, the public again, and then good and welfare. So they actually have the board commenting twice, the public commenting twice, and the superintendent and the admin at the top. And most of them, that's how it goes, where the superintendent is at the top of the thing, because this is a board meeting. So I would like to see the order change so we can address the community comments as a board, and we are the last speakers. And I would assume superintendent would go first, and then let's see, public, superintendent, and board like the other districts.
I would support that motion.
I need a clarification on what the motion was.
That we change our agenda order at the end with our comments.
We're on the agenda, though. We're on agenda. We're obviously adding and not adding things to the agenda, so I'm not sure what the motion is regarding the agenda.
Today's agenda, we have, it goes superintendent's report. At the end, it goes, where does it go? Where's the public comments here?
Well, here, first of all, yeah,
Okay,
Board of Education.
Board of Education reports, public comments, superintendent's reports. I say that we switch that, or I'm making a motion that we switch that to be public comments, superintendent comments, and board comments.
And the reason I support that, and again, this is nothing that came up today or anything, I think most people up here will know that I've been trying for that for 6 years. I've always thought it was a bad way to go that we have a chain of command in this district to where you start with a building level principal if you have an issue, and you move up the pyramid, the superintendent, and eventually the last top of that pyramid is the Board of Education. Yet, when people come to address the Board of Education, there's no dialogue or anything back from this board. We kind of look at them and they look at us, and so many times they've said, that's it, you're not going to say anything to me. So I am in full support of that, because again, I feel allow the community to come up and speak. Dr. Wunderlich, he can then also address the issue, and then at the end, it allows the board to address the issue or add their comments as well. And I think the public would feel like they're kind of hearing from the board with their concern.
I would support it as well. Oftentimes, people come and speak in public comment, and I'm chasing them out of here to try to catch them as they're running out of here, because they've said something that I would like to talk to them about, or I'd like to follow up with them, and they don't always fill out one of these green cards. So if they don't fill out the card, I don't know how to track you down until I see you back out in the community. Oftentimes, I get comments from people that I have questions that I want to ask the board. Well, I always inform them that this is not a format where it's a Q&A. But if you do get up and speak in public comment, I will know what your concern is, what your question could be, and when I speak in my board member report, I would have an opportunity to possibly reflect on some information that I have with regard to your issue. I think the public would appreciate that, and I think the public would appreciate it even more in light of all of what has happened over the past month as we've moved forward with this bullying issue. So I would support it as well, and if you do not support it, I would ask the other board members that don't support it why you don't support that. Thank you.
Any other comments?
There are very real reasons why we have an agenda set up the way that it is. And it isn't because we don't want to hear from our community or we don't want to talk to our community. And it certainly isn't because we don't want to engage in dialogue with the community. It has more to do with ensuring that the conversations happen at the right place, at the right level, and that those conversations are personal. And the other piece of it is that our job as a board is policy, and it is not the day-to-day handling of the district. It is not our job to administrate the district. And so when people come to the board with a concern, we are usually not the people, almost never the people that can fix their problem. We appreciate hearing the problem. We want to make sure that your problem is resolved, and we follow up to ensure that your problem is resolved. But we don't work in the school district. We are not the people to resolve that problem. So it's a very specific, the way that we do it is very specific for a reason, so that we can ensure that our administrators are the ones, or the teachers, or the principals, or the superintendent, as the case may be, are the ones that are resolving the issues. It's where the problems are best handled. We don't have the capacity to solve the problems because that's not what we're here for. We're here for policy and oversight.
Well, I respectfully disagree a little bit because we have a chain of command, and the last people that is right on our website, and our what we say is, when you get to the top of the pyramid, you go to the Board of Education. So we offer that out there for the community. And I agree with you, a lot of what we do here could have been handled, through the building level or something like that. All I'm saying is, if they do come up to speak, we then do have an opportunity to say something back. Not that we are going to say we're going to be there tomorrow to fix it, but we can at least give them an answer, at least reply to them, act like they're being heard. Because again, so many times in my 7 years, that's been such a big complaint when people do come to that podium and they'll say, that's it, you're not going to say anything, and they're upset about it. So I don't think it's a bad thing to let the community speak first, let Dr. Wunderlich follow up, and he would probably be able to answer it best, but at least allow the board to also answer or give some communication to them, because after all, they're doing what they're supposed to. They're coming to the board. They follow the chain of command.
And if I may add as well.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt. But Mr. Trusha? I'll get back
And
with you.
sometimes when people come to speak, not anyone that's here or going to speak tonight, but sometimes people aren't truthful. They come and say things that they truly believe, but it may not be what is actually happening. It's what they feel is happening. That needs to be investigated. This gives us that opportunity they come and vent, which a lot of times that's what they need to do. But it may not be truthful in what they're seeing. So if I try to fix something or answer someone's question that they're asking me tonight, and I find out that they were untruthful to me, I look foolish. I've wasted a lot of time. By giving them that opportunity to get back with the superintendent, to talk to the people in charge, the people in charge of a teacher, a student, whoever this person speaking is having an issue with, we have an opportunity to go back and find out what the story is. For me to answer them that night does not work. If someone wants to put on a back and forth type show and they're going to try to pull a gotcha on me, that's very easy to do. I am unfamiliar with it, and they're coming up with something I know nothing about. The administration does have a clue. They know what's going on in the buildings. It is something that we do follow up on. I've always tried to. If you speak at this meeting, we will address it at the next meeting. If this was resolved this way or this happened there. Again, I understand everyone wants to hear that night, how can you help me? How can we And we asked them to talk to this person. And again, they don't tend to run off, sometimes they do, but our agenda, I believe it mentions that we will be around after the meeting to talk to anyone. So it's a safety for both the district and ourselves personally. I don't need any help looking foolish. I don't want to be set up. And that's personally why we're not able to address the issue at that time.
Mr. Torres?
And I don't think the intent is to address the issue at that time. It's just to get the information so that it is noted. I can tell you right now, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering the question, but I do want to have the information so that way, if there is something pertinent to what was said, that I could talk about that in my board member comments. For example, at the last board meeting, there was a person that came and spoke about gun safety in our schools. That is something that I have particularly had a strong interest in, have worked with the Michigan Association of School Boards on, and with the Oakland County School Board Association on. That person left this meeting before I could actually get to them, so I had to spend the next day doing some work to try to get a hold of them and speak to them. In my opinion, we're not trying to answer any questions. We're just trying to get the information that we can, and if we can help them to some extent while we're up here, we can do that. I think a number of us as board members have had a lot of people reach out to us over the past month. And some of the things that we saw was there is a disconnect between the buildings, between central office, and even to our board members, because board members weren't being told information. I would like people to come and speak in public comment and give me that information. It would actually make my job easier, because then I could follow up with the superintendent and with administration and say, can we follow up on that, like I have been doing with numerous people over the past few weeks. So I fully, wholeheartedly support Ms. Bargon's request or her motion to allow board member comments to be at the end of the agenda and switch it with the superintendent's report.
And we would be,
I-
sorry, we would be
I-
matching,
I get a moment?
okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get everybody's conversation in here.
I thought you were going to end it, so I just wanted to make sure I got my comment in.
I'm not going to end you.
Okay.
I'll come back to you. I'm just saying that, okay, I've been on the board 26 or 7 years. This agenda has changed. I think the way it sits now clearly respects the board, it respects the staff, and most importantly, it respects the community. Because I have seen the board agenda change, and it really affects the respect that the people who come to us. I think every person who comes to this board gets heard. I think every board member gets heard. I think that as long as this meeting runs, board members are allowed to say whatever they want, and they are heard. And so I think that the agenda is set up appropriately and should remain as it's printed.
Okay.
Mrs., go ahead.
Barkan, yes. I look at this and I see our agenda as being different than all the communities around us. I don't know what that reason is, but it's different, and it doesn't seem just logically to make sense. Hearing the public first, having the superintendent speak, he can clear up all kinds of things that you were worried about, and then having the board speak. It is a board meeting. It makes sense that we would close the meeting and be able to have a response to our community, because I do not like staring at people and not being able to say anything.
I think also, I'm sorry, who's next?
Just try to, I'll take you next.
Thank you. Mr. Torres, I think, made a great point. I think everybody else here is making some valid points. Mr. Petrucia made some valid points. That being said, when we get to board reports, we don't have to answer. We don't have to comment on it. So therefore, if we don't know what to say, or we don't have the proper answer, we don't comment on it. But we also, that gives us the opportunity to comment, to say, we hear you, and like Mr. Torres said, the last meeting, our citizen that came about the guns in schools, had he had the opportunity right then and there to speak, to address that person, he could have done it right then and there that night. And anybody else who did not wish to speak didn't have to do it. So it's a choice, but at least it gives us that option to at least say something to the community. And again, I've seen it for 7 years. I know you've been on a lot longer than I have. but I've seen multiple people come to that podium and just, after they speak, they just look at us and say, that's it? Nothing? And we basically tell them it's not a time for, dialogue. And if a board member so chooses to add a comment or give something, if they feel comfortable doing that, let them do it. And if they don't, they don't.
I appreciate your comments. I totally understand, I think, where you're coming from. My experience is, regardless of who sat in this chair, there was comments back to whoever spoke publicly. My concern, and I think what you guys are actually asking for, is to be able to have back and forth dialogue between the person at your microphone and the person at that microphone.
Nope.
Because in my opinion, in my opinion, that's where the frustration, when people leave here frustrated, it's not that they talk and then the seven of us just answer, that's it. Their frustration is they have a question and another question and they don't get an answer. And that sounds like the format you're trying to set up does not solve that frustration. So for that purpose, I still think that this agenda is appropriately set. And I'm going to wrap this up because, at some point, we need to decide we're going to have this on the agenda and actually get to our agenda.
Well, the conversation needs to happen.
And the conversation is
And it is
happening.
happening, so let's continue it. So it's merely a point of information. Nobody's talking about a Q&A. If somebody's coming up here and asking questions, I don't necessarily have to answer it, but they have the
You
opportunity.
don't necessarily have to, but
Yeah,
you
but
want
I
to-
have the opportunity to.
Then the agenda changes because it becomes a Q&A.
No.
It doesn't become a board
No,
report.
you're misunderstanding, sir. What it is that we're saying is that we can now address it in our board member comments. This isn't a back and forth. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything when somebody comes up in public comment. When they say something and it's something that pertinent to what I could answer or what I have knowledge about, I would now have the opportunity to address it in board member comments. And secondly, it was mentioned that we have policy, we have oversight is what we do, and we are also representation to the community. And I think a number of us as board members have learned that in a whole nother way over the past month, that we are the representatives of this district. And this community is who we work for. This community is who we serve. And who do they elect? They elect the board. So the board should have the final word. The board should have the opportunity to speak and to interact with the community and to address any issues that may be brought forth and comment. Ms. Bargon has done some research. I'm friends with numerous people in other school districts across Oakland County through my works with Oakland County School Board Association, and other school districts are doing it differently. We've done it this way for, you're saying, quite some time, but it doesn't mean that it's the right way. If we change it, it would just be for tonight. I would propose let's change it tonight, let's see how it goes, and if it doesn't go well, we'll go back to the old way.
I would just like to add a quick comment. Nobody disagrees what Member Torres is saying. We work for the community. We work for the community. We're here to listen to you. That's the whole reason we have board meetings, is to set policy and to make sure we always have our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the community. There's been a couple different comments. I think Bob has spoken many times about, and none of us feel comfortable when people come up to talk to us. We want to have that dialogue, but we want to have it after the meeting, because to do it in a board setting can oftentimes, as Mr. Petruccia said, create a back and forth. So I recognize that's not what you're asking for. This to me feels like an information item that we've already had tonight, and I actually need some time to process it, because I want to go back and look, and I want to understand how this might work. I want to look at what neighboring districts are doing. It's very different than, I think, the concern that Bob has brought up in the past, which what we're really saying is that the board gets the final word. And so if we could instead treat it as we just had the information item, as if we talked about it tonight, and then give us time to process that, and then we can talk about it at our next board meeting, whether we change the agenda in that format. That would just be my recommendation.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 3-3. Moving to our recognition of achievement.
I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that, I move that we discuss the bullying task force and its current status.
I would second that motion.
Any reason why we're adding this tonight?
I think it's a very important topic for our community, and I know that there's been a meeting at least in between, and that I think hearing the status and letting us make comments would be very appropriate.
If I may as well. I also agree. I think that this is a very important topic to the community, and that we should actually have it on the agenda for every board meeting from here on in as we move forward with the task force, so we can get continuous updates of what is occurring.
I have a dissenting opinion. I understand that the task force is doing some great work. We are so grateful for that. But when we have information items that are added to the agenda, it's so that our administrators can be prepared to come and to discuss and to answer any questions that we might have relative to that topic. I'm not sure that it needs to be at every board meeting, and since it's not on this agenda and an information item, nobody's prepared to come and give us that information, that it doesn't make sense to add it to the agenda at this time.
If I may. I think that the superintendent's been very involved with the bullying task force. I have as well, and so has one other board member at least. And I think it's important that we do keep it on the agenda, so it is something that we are always talking about and constantly giving information on. I don't think anybody really wants anything fancy. I'd be willing to give an update as the information item on what's been happening with the bully task force since our last meeting. I think the superintendent could pretty easily do so as well, just giving an overview of what's been occurring.
That is actually the purpose of a board report, so I think that would be fantastic.
Well, excuse me.
Mr. Petrucci wants to comment.
Thank you. And again, we get the agenda a week ahead of time. This could be added before a meeting to add things during the meeting and spend time on something like this. I am totally against. This is part of a show that I don't approve of.
Mary? Any other comment?
Well, I was just going to say, board reports, I certainly do hope that it shows up in a board report since it's not on the agenda, but having the opportunity to ask questions, I think is a good thing. That's why I think it should be added as an information item.
There seems to be a lot of discussion about what should go in the agenda, in the order of the agenda, and people have indicated to me that they like it in a particular order and they would like certain items added. And my opinion is the agenda should be studied as a whole. I know Mary gave us several examples of every community of school district around us. So I'm kind of an evidence-based kind of guy. I figured I'd pull their agenda. And I think there's good things and bad things in their agenda. I think you need to look at it as a whole. We're the only district that does not have a consent agenda, which is typically routine matters that are all handled without any public input or board comment. So perhaps we should look at a consent agenda. And pulling the examples that you gave me, there were such things on that as minutes, retirements, staff appointments, finance reports, bid awards, purchases, leases, legal fees. This board allows board comment and public comment on all those. Another idea they had on there, they had timing on their agenda. Board reports, 1 to 5 minutes. Community minutes reports, 5 to 20 minutes. I'm sure it's a guideline, but, you know, it's something that we need to maybe look at as a whole. I disagree with adding to the agenda, and so all those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 3-3.
If I can step up also, I would like to make a motion. Can we add new business 9A4 that we are taking action on tonight? If we could move that to an information item as well as a new business action item, and therefore we can discuss the information first because we are voting on it tonight, and give the reasons for that, and then, of course, keep it on as an action item later on, but add it to the information items as well, so it can be discussed.
Without being discussed as an action item?
No, it's an action item isn't now.
And you want to discuss it?
I would like it to be up in an information item. Normally, when we have action items, they're on as information items first.
So you want to discuss it as an information item,
Correct.
and then you want to discuss it as new business?
Well, it would be an action item, like we do every other thing we vote on. I mean, don't, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't we normally, when we have something that we're going to vote on, I mean, I look down here of consideration of certain purchases, the snowplow trucks and the computer equipment lease, at our last meeting, that was an information item, and tonight we're voting on it, which, you know, information item, and then we vote on it. I'm just saying that 9A4 has not been an information item. So I'm saying, asking to make a motion to make it an information item, but still leave it on as an action item.
We could talk about it as both an information and an action item at the point that we get to it. I imagine that-
I agree, correct. That's my only thought was.
I'm just going to slow, I
Yeah.
didn't know if I heard a second, just to clarify.
I'm sorry.
I would second that.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
And my only thought, and I agree with you, Ms. Sutherland, about we can discuss it when it comes to action item. My only thought was that it's could be somewhat of a touchy subject, and I think if we have the information item first, at that point, when we go into audience comments on action items, so the audience has a chance to comment on something we're going to vote on, they will have heard the information ahead of time. They can't, you know, they can see what it is if they have the agenda and they have the supporting information, but I don't know if everybody has the agenda, I don't know if everybody has the supporting information. So when they look down to 9A4, their time to comment on that has already passed. But if we have it as an information item first, then they can comment on it if they choose. I'm not saying to take it off as an action item, I'm saying leave it on just as you have it, but I'm also saying add it, that topic that we're voting on tonight, as an information item, so when it does come to audience comments on action items, they have a chance to weigh in. And maybe nobody will, maybe they will, I don't know.
You understand what the information is going to be? It's going to be the board directed the administration to put it on the agenda to remove it as surplus property. I don't know what else I don't know what else that any administrator would give us.
Well, we would, don't you think the public has a right to?
Well, they just heard me, but I mean, I can,
Okay, but you also just talked about something that was discussed in closed session, which we shouldn't be doing.
If I could add,
And that's why I asked for, I'm sorry, that's why I asked for it to be on as an information item.
with the same information I just gave.
Correct.
I think, go ahead.
I would say just, I would support it because I think procedurally, it would be correct, just to make sure we're dotting all our i's and crossing our t's here.
Okay. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Rob.
Yeah, I just want to, because I support Mr. Piggott's idea and the purpose of it, but he had an opportunity to have it changed on the agenda before our meeting. So because of that, I don't support it.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 3-3. So with that, we move,
No, I have another motion. This one I did email you about and asked you. I did not receive a response. I would like to make a motion that we move to discuss our April 26th study session regarding our budget, discuss our thoughts as board members about what we, our thoughts about the budget, since it was an off-camera session, not taped, unless the community came, they did not see it. So I think it's more than appropriate, if we're truly being transparent, to discuss at a regular meeting, on camera, what we discussed at that, or summarize what we discussed at that meeting.
I would second that.
any discussion?
I did just as well, just for, so all the information's out there. I did as well email the board president with regard to this issue, asking that it be added to the agenda beforehand as well.
And I get emails saying, you shouldn't have added it this late. I get emails asking me to add this late, so I figured I'll just wait and let all of us make a decision whether we discuss something so that we can put it on our channel TV. So I don't think it needs to be on the agenda tonight.
Add another comment. I will say, though, just with regard to putting it on the agenda, there was no clear direction, unless I'm wrong here, you can correct me, given to administration with regard to how we are to proceed with the budget that we have to approve by July 1st. So I don't understand how the administration would be able to proceed with a budget if there was no clear direction given by a majority of the board as to how to proceed on that budget. So I believe it should be an agenda item, and that was why I emailed you.
To that point, that's a very different agenda item than summarizing the board study session and having an information item to recant what was done at another open meeting. I do believe we will have another agenda item relative to the budget, and that would be on the agenda in advance for all members to see in advance.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 3-3.
Okay, and one more. You had addressed it during the bully task force, but I emailed you this, asking it, and actually noting the minutes for today. We had talked about having it be an information item to discuss, but I'd like to make a motion that we change the order of the agenda at the end of it to allow board members to address the superintendent and community comments. And at our last meeting, we had said that we were going to have it as an information item.
I would support that.
So I'm not even clear what the motion is.
That we change the agenda order to allow board members to address the superintendent and community comments. But as this was supposed to be, and as I think it was Ms. Sutherland, actually, Member Sutherland, that suggested she needed time to think about it, and that she suggested it be an information item.
I did not suggest this as an information item.
I'll look back at the minutes, but.
So are you asking that it be Board of Education reports, comments? I'm not sure, based on our agenda, how do you want to place this in
Well,
here?
reading, just a moment, and it says, Member Sutherland noted that she would need
Okay, I'm
more
just trying to clarify
time
where-
to consider this, and suggested treating this as an information item and bring it back to the next meeting. So that is what our minutes say.
Okay, we're all here to clarify what we may have said, but I'm just trying to clarify, if you could indicate what you want, where you want in the agenda, then I could call for a vote.
I'm asking that we change the order of the agenda to allow board members, as we discussed last week, or in our motion, we discussed, to have it be where board members, the superintendent would speak, community comments, and board members would speak at the end, since it is a board meeting.
If I can weigh in, I'll be the first one to stand up and support it. And it has nothing to do with any board politics or anything that's going on right now. I think everybody here knows that there's a lot of decisiveness right now. But I will stand truthful that for 7 years, since I've been on this board, I've been in favor of having the board speak last at a meeting. I've made it very clear to everybody. I've always felt that when a person comes up to that podium to speak, and we talked about this last meeting, we should have the chance to respond. Our rules say, chain of command say you come to the Board of Education last after you've exhausted all people to go to. And when they do come there, we just kind of give them a blank stare, and multiple times they've said, that's it. And I know we talked about this 2 weeks ago at our last meeting, and everybody made some good comments up here. I mean, there were no bad comments. There were good reasons why and why not. But I support it just because I've wanted to do it for 7 years. I feel if somebody comes up to speak to the board and I can answer it, if I can say something, if I can at least as a board member say, I hear you, I understand, we'll ask somebody to take care of it, something, give some type of reaction, I think it makes people feel good. A lot of times in my 7 years, I've heard people say, I just wanted somebody to listen to me. Let me speak. Hear me. So, it has nothing to do with board politics, nothing to go with what's going on right now, as we're all aware. This is strictly, I support it because I've been wanting to do it for 7 years. I think it's the right thing to do to allow the board. It is a board meeting. We've all been very consistent with that. It is a board meeting. It is our meeting. My thought is the board should speak last. So that's why I support it, and I have for 7 years.
I could add too as well. I support it as well. I just want to be clear that it's, would not evolve into any kind of question and answer. People would have an opportunity to speak, to address the board, as they normally do in public comment. The superintendent would be able to give his report, and the board members would be able to give their report. The idea behind it, and I think the philosophy behind it is that when they do speak in public comment, if there is something that we can address at that moment, we can speak to it. Some information that we could give them at that time, we can speak to it within reason. Maybe we can't, but the opportunity to be able to hear their comments and to be able to possibly say something back, I think is an important one. And I just want to be clear that this would still follow normal procedures where there's not going to be a back and forth. So I would support it. I oftentimes, as I've said before, have found myself trying to catch people when they leave here because they said something that I could address or that I could help them with, trying to, grab one of my cards to find them and get it over to them real quick. So this would provide me that opportunity. To me, I just believe that it does make good common sense, and it would be a good opportunity for us to communicate better with our community. And I would also add that this would just be as to this board meeting. I say, why don't we just try it out for one board meeting? If it doesn't work, we could go back to the other way. Mary's motion that she put forth just speaks as to one board meeting. So if it doesn't work out and we try it again at the next board meeting, we just go back to the way it was. I say, prove me wrong.
So I think the message is the board wants to speak last.
Correct.
So I put a note here, 8 o'clock, because we have to change the tape at 8. So I have no problem with the board speaking when I think you're talking about after public comment. I hate to be the guy who gives the history lesson, but I'm going to stand on this issue. We spend a lot of time on the 5%, the negative. We have directed our superintendent and Dr. Wunderlich that you're going to end the meeting on a positive note, talking about the 95%, which is the good and the great stuff going on, period. Well, that's how we're going to end it. So I firmly believe that I don't have any problem with the board speaking after the public, but I'm going to stand my ground personally and direct the superintendent to say, I want to end the meeting on a 95%. So I'm willing to, if you're willing to amend it where we have public comments on non-action items, board reports, then superintendent reports, and then adjournment, you may get my support, but I need the motion amended. But
If I could just add one thing, I would say that, as board members, I always say, something positive in my board member reports. And I will add that the superintendent does not always end in a positive note, at least the last couple of board meetings that we have had. So I think that argument that you're making is flawed.
But I have more control over making sure he ends on a positive note going forward than you. But if fine, then we'll just stay with the agenda the way it is. So
It's a good compromise. Why not? Why don't we try it?
Yeah, I could go with your compromise.
not my motion.
So what the compromise is to make it be where, let's see, how does it?
I think to where we would speak after the public,
Okay,
but
so
the
public.
superintendent
Then the
would-
motion to have number 10A and B, to item 10 to be flip-flopped with item 11.
Perfect.
So item 10 would become item 11, and item 11 will become item 10.
And that is a motion, correct?
No, we need a revised motion, I believe.
And this is with that the superintendent's,
Number
Positive.
12 is superintendent's report, number 13 is adjournment.
but this is with that the superintendent is positive, ending on your 95% positive note.
Unless the superintendent has to defend accusations that are made during board reports.
Okay, I'm not going to bicker back and forth about what the superintendent's report's going to be tonight. I try to wave a little
Right.
flag, like, I'll make a compromise, but if you don't want to
I
compromise, then
think
I'm...
John's compromise is fair, so I would agree with,
Okay, well, we'll see how, yeah, I can do that, and then we'll see. Again, I just, looking at around us, where of the districts of West Bloomfield, Clarkston, Walled Lake, and Huron Valley, and I didn't do more than that, I just did 4. It's always public, superintendent, administration, and board.
I looked at the same ones.
Mm-hmm.
They have the public speak once, we have them speak twice. They do a consent agenda, which takes out half the things we talk about into a
But
5-minute vote.
I'm just speaking about
They
this.
put timing behind it. So if you want to copy what our peers do,
Yeah.
then present the whole document. Don't just cherry pick the best parts.
All right, I'm going to jump in and say, why don't we amend the motion and let's do both. John would like the superintendent to end. At least my biggest thing is I want to be able to address any public comments. He offered that. I would hope you amend the motion and let's move forward. It's not worth it to go back and forth.
Okay, I'll amend it to say that. Switch items 10 and 11.
I second that.
So the agenda as proposed will be number 9, new business, A and B. Then it'll be number 10, audience comments on non-action items. Then it'll be 11, discussion items, A and B, 12, superintendent's report, and 13, adjourn. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Keep me in line when I skip it. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 4-1.
5.
Any other changes?
5.
5-1. I can't count. Thanks. Dr. Wunderlich. Thank you. Mr. Petruccia, could you be secretary? Mrs. Bargan?
I may be leaving early, so.
Oh, that's right, you're right.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just say no. It's-
And I've had, I need a secretary.
I've never done it before. Maybe you want to give it to someone who's done it before? I haven't gotten any, I have no idea what to do.
Joan has treasury stuff. John Paul, do you want to?
Yeah, I can do it. Is there a packet, a board packet for
I got
secretary?
tabs.
I don't know if Bob's coming, but this is his. And we have Heather on the phone. I'm going to put her by the mic over here. So I just need the roll call.
Okay, just go down the line. Oh, okay, all board members are present, with the exception of board member Piggott.
Thank you.
And board member Heather Hall is available by way of telephone.
Great, thank you. Next, I move to approve the agenda. The agenda will be as presented.
I have a comment or
Morgan?
motion to add to the agenda. So I'd like to make a motion. I move that we add discussion regarding the MASB superintendent evaluation process and how we didn't follow it, the violation of that, and then discuss the Roberts Rules of Order violation last meeting pertaining to that same topic, if we could add that to the agenda.
I support that.
It's been moved and supported that we add to the agenda MASB evaluation
The
process.
superintendent evaluation process, talk about how it's supposed to go versus how it went. And then also the Roberts Rules of Order, how you came back after the meeting and it wasn't clear on the agenda that that was going to be happening.
So, okay, I understand what your issue is, but I'm not sure what your motion is for the agenda
That we can
item.
talk about it, have a discussion.
About the superintendent's evaluation?
Process and how it should have been.
Okay, you know, we cannot actually discuss the evaluation.
I'm talking about the process.
Okay. All those in favor?
I support.
Right.
I think we're going to have conversation.
Oh,
correct?
sure.
Okay. Did you want to start off, Ms. Bargon, or?
Well, we got,
Well, I
you want to
can-
just discuss putting it on the agenda? Or you
Correct,
want to discuss the topic?
I want to discuss putting on the agenda to the extent that myself, as a board member, was not notified of the superintendent's evaluation until 6 days before the actual evaluation was to be voted on. It is true that it is in the superintendent's contract that we are to have his evaluation approved by June 1st. However, those deadlines can be extended. I had made contact with the Michigan Association of School Boards to that effect. I did send an email to the board president, Mr. Himmelsbach, back in April, wanting to know where we were with the evaluation process. And we received the evaluation information 6 days before it was actually voted on. So it was, the evaluation was, material was given to us on May 11th, and we voted on it on May 17th. So there was only 6 days' notice given to board members, and there were over 200 pages worth of material to actually go through. And as I have stated before, I take the process very seriously. I'm very thorough every year when I do it, and I don't think that it was a fair process. And I did speak with the Michigan Association of School Boards, and they indicated that the model for superintendent evaluations is not supposed to encompass 6 days.
So I don't want to interrupt you, but, so are we debating putting on the agenda, or are we debating the item
I'm
itself?
making the case for putting it on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
That it is not to be condensed into a 6-day span. That is not how the model was created. And they felt that it was not in the district's best interest for a school board to move the process into a 6-day process. And additionally, was raised that they would recommend at least 3 weeks, and that board members have at least 2 weeks to review the information submitted by the superintendent at the closed session meeting. In this instance, the closed session meeting occurred, the superintendent provided his information, and the evaluation was voted on directly after that meeting, and it is not in compliance with the Michigan Association of School Boards best practices for the evaluation model that we utilize.
Yeah, so putting it on the
Was it-
agenda, we can discuss why that occurred that way, why we made such a violation of the process.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Heather?
I'm a no.
Motion fails. So we move to information items.
Oh, no, I have some more things I'd like to add to the agenda. I'd like to make a motion that we add a discussion regarding board members calling in to board meetings to vote on the agenda. I think it would be a healthy thing to discuss. This has just happened, that Heather's calling in, and I don't know if the public understands why. And I called MASB and talked to them about that, and I think having a discussion about when it's appropriate, what could go on. I mean, could I be, Bob's not here, he's at work, could he call in if he's at work? Are we going to start that precedent? What's going to be happening? So I think it is very, very appropriate. I got a lot of questions from people, why there was a call in, when did that start, how is this a process? I had to actually call MASB myself to check to see about it. So I think it would be very transparent to talk out loud about why this is happening and what our future in this is. What if 4 of us are calling in? Like, those kinds of things. Like, how far do we let this go? Could all 7 of us call in? So I think we need to talk about that and set our example.
I would
Could
support.
could you clarify the motion?
I'd like to move that we add discussion regarding board members calling in to meetings to vote to the agenda.
I would support that.
So just to vote or to participate?
That's, well,
Just
do
want to
both.
restrict it whether she can vote or not?
Let's talk about it. I don't know. It was not even talked about, right?
So I need to so your
vote,
motion
well,
is
let's talk
to
about
restrict her
voting.
from voting.
Well, I think voting is a different, whole nother level than just calling in and listening in. And is it appropriate? Is it okay? Is it not? We haven't even talked about it. It just got done. You just put her on the phone last time, and then she was there, and she went into your closed session and on the phone. So let's just talk about it.
Just to be clear, she did not go into closed session. That would be
Right.
against the rules. We did follow the rules on that. She did not come into closed session. And it is okay that she calls in because that's also been validated. But I know that's not what we're talking about. We're actually talking about the motion to talk about it, so.
We're talking about the motion to talk about her voting.
A board member calling in, any board member, not just her, calling in to vote.
Well, I would, if I could just make a comment. Though I don't begrudge any board member for calling into a board meeting to participate in the process and to even vote, I just would like some clarification, and I'm sure the board president has done his homework on this, as to under what authority is that allowed, and does the precedent limit the number of times that can be done, in you know, what does the precedent show? I think that would be just a good answer for the board, because I can tell you that I have not been informed of it at all, and I think that we do deserve that as a collective board.
Right, yeah, what are our options of calling in? Like if I'm out of town and can't get back here, can I call in if I'm just out of town, or?
Yes.
Well, but we have
You
to,
don't
I
have
think.
to. Common sense dictates that. I've called in 2 or 3 times when my son had sporting events. There were importing type events that I thought that a vote should be cast. I wanted to be on that to cast it, and it's been afforded to anyone that is unable to make the meeting. Remember him, or Halls has an illness that she's not able to be with us, and we afford her that right. If you had something that you weren't able to, that would be afforded to you. We're not denying it to anyone.
I would just like to have that full discussion. That's the point of this.
Okay, so there's a motion to put on the agenda discussion about board members voting by phone. All those in favor? Opposed? Heather?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Can you repeat it for me, please?
The motion is whether or not to add to the agenda a discussion item to talk about board members being able to vote via the phone. There were 2 in favor and 3 opposed, and we're wondering what your vote is.
I'm happy to discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Motion fails, 3-3. Can I move to information items?
Actually, thank you for asking. I do have one more. I would like to have a motion, or I would like to add to the agenda, make a motion to add to the agenda about the Waterford School District complaint process and the use of lawyers to the agenda.
I would support that.
That's a pretty broad topic. I'm not sure who we'd expect to respond to that, but
Well, in the, if you read the complaint process in the bylaws, we have 2 compliance officers. Both are here, so they certainly would know the rules. And the superintendent's also mentioned, so I'm sure they would know the rules as well. I'd just like to talk about the process and how it works. If a complaint is given, made against someone, what the process is for hiring lawyers, who decides who gets the lawyer, why a lawyer would be chosen versus our compliance officers that we have assigned in the policies, in the bylaws and policies. So just clarifying this process, because it's very confusing.
I would appreciate some clarification as well. I think it's in the best interest of all of our district employees. We're a $100 million a year operation here. There are a lot of employees within this district, many that fall underneath the board policies that are set forth by this district as it relates to complaints, as it relates to the use of attorneys. And I think that this is a point of information that would be in the best interest for not only our board, but also for our school district employees, and even our students and their parents to be well-versed on exactly what the process is. We do have 2 compliance officers here. We have the superintendent of schools here, and we have the president of the Waterford School Board here as well. I would think any one of them would be well-versed on the process and would be open to discuss the complaint process just as it pertains to our employees in the district. And I think it is in the best interest and protection of all of our employees here.
any other comments on that issue?
I guess I'm not clear on what the conversation would be. I think we know that we invoke legal assistance if and when it's required.
Well, I don't think we know that. I think there is not a whole lot of precedent set forth as to when we do and when we don't utilize legal authority and what the actual complaint process is. So if somebody files a complaint against any person in this school district who is an employee, how long is that process? How do you substantiate that complaint? At what point is a complaint not substantiated and it is set aside? So those are answers that we don't have. And I don't know if any other board member, feel free to chime in. If you do know the process, please feel free to, including Mr. Himmelsbach. But I don't know the answers to that, and if anybody does, please go ahead.
I just don't think tonight's agenda is the appropriate place to put it.
When it would be appropriate? When would it be an appropriate time to talk about this?
Well, certainly, I get concerns that I don't put stuff on the agenda, and then I get concerns again now that,
This is an important issue, though. This isn't...
It's important enough to address it at 6:15 at a meeting that started at 6 o'clock.
It is.
Right.
This is the best interest of our employees in our district. We are a $100 billion a year operation. We have numerous employees, and I think that many employees would appreciate that,
If they
including
were-
the board.
If we were clear on what it was, right, so.
The clarification is just with regard, what is the process? We have two compliance officers here, a superintendent and a board president.
And when lawyers get involved in that process, when that happens.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Heather?
No,
Motion passes 4-2.
Motion fails.
Fails.
Fails. Can I move to information items?
Yes.
Thank you. Are we okay? Mott High School French trip, please. Carly? Mrs. Bargon, if you could
Yes, sorry.
be secretary till Mr. Pickett arrives,
Okay,
please.
thank you. All members present, with the exception of Mr. Piggott.
That we move to the approved agenda. The agenda will stand as
well-
presented unless somebody has an,
Yeah, I would like to make a
Bargan?
motion. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to add excuse me, to add a discussion about board packet changes, the process for that, if we could this evening.
Support?
Well, what I'm wondering is...
hold on, I'm
Okay.
trying to get your motion. Was there a motion in there?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to have a conversation about the process for board packet changes.
It's been moved and supported. Are any comments or questions?
Yes,
Mrs. Bargon?
Okay, yes. I'm wondering, I was looking at the board packet that was emailed to us Friday, and it has 72 pages in it. Includes the Neola policies, and also the specifics of the contracts and other things, clearly, if it's 72 pages. And then I'm looked at the district
The
website.
discussion's on the motion to put it on the agenda.
Yeah, and I'm telling you why I'd like it, why I think we need to have discussion. I looked at the website today, just all day, and then right before I left, and the packet that's on there only has 24 pages. So I'd like to discuss why there's that discrepancy, and of course, I assume the packet I receive is the packet that the public has seen. So I'm just wondering why that would happen.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I would just like clarification, if I may, like clarification to understand whether this is the same packet, the one that I've been reviewing for the past week, is reflective of the packet that we do have tonight. I don't know that it is, and I just would like an answer to that question.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, it's also, oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to call on us. Okay.
Well, I didn't know if anyone else wanted to talk, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
For me. In addition to what Mr. Or Member Piggott said, it's the one that's on the website, that if, sometimes public brings their laptops and follows along with our packet, and it's not the same that I can see.
Any other comments or questions?
My comment is just to the extent, Mr. Board President, that if we could just get an answer that it, as to whether it is or is not the same packet that we've been reviewing for the past week and a half, the one that is presented tonight. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 4-2. Anything else?
Yes, actually, I have another motion. I'd love I see that the Bully Task Force is an information item to discuss for next week, which is September 6th, after school starts. I'd love to have a discussion about the Bully Task Force tonight, what's been done by administration, what their fall plans are, school's kicking off in between this meeting and the start of school. I'd like to have a discussion, so I'd like to add that on the agenda for this evening.
Support.
So your motion is,
To add a Bully Task Force update to the agenda for tonight.
And I would support that.
it's been moved and supported. Any comments or questions?
It's not clear to me why we're talking about it tonight if we're going to talk about it at the next meeting.
May I comment? Or go ahead, Ms. or, okay.
Go ahead.
Because the next meeting is September 6th after school has started, and I'm assuming that administration has been working hard over the summer and come up with plans and a direction, something for the beginning of the school year. Teachers are going to be having back-to-school meetings at their schools with their principals, so I'm just wondering what administration has done this summer in terms of the Bully Task Force for the kickoff of school.
Any other comments or questions?
I think it would be fair enough to find out some additional information about where we're at with the Bully Task Force and the bullying. I know Mr. Wunderlich in my one-on-ones with him has provided me some information with regard to it, and but I think it would be helpful for the public just to be aware as we move into the school district or school year for the school district. Thank you.
Any other comments? I personally think it's another respective administration. We don't want a presentation that was thought of 10 minutes after we started our board meeting, rather than wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks and have a complete presentation that the administration had planned on. So I think it can wait till September the 8th, whatever the next board meeting is.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I don't think that anybody's asking for anything in particularly fancy, just something to the effect that, this is where we're at, this is what has occurred over the summer. I know we hired some additional social workers to help with planning for the social emotional support for kids when school begins in the fall, so I think that that would be helpful for the public to be aware of and have information on as we move into the school year. Thank you.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 4-2. Anything else?
No.
With that, we move to information items. Attendance, Mrs. McPhee.
Good evening. Many of you know Becky Staub. Becky used to be one of our wonderful counselors at Pierce Middle School. And